Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting, Tuesday, September 28th at 1 p.m. in Council Chambers. And welcome to the Squamish Station Traditional Territory where we are convened. Council will have there is a proposal from staff that we amend our agenda. And that is to include a motion to close. And that would be item number 6. The termination item then will become number 7. And the reason is to discuss personnel or legal issues. And could I have a motion then to adopt that amended agenda? Councillor Herford, seconded by Councillor Race. So I'll just read the ministerial order M192. And this is a staff recommendation that pursuant to ministerial order number M192, the District of Squamish is allowing electronic and limited in-person attendance at the September 28, 2021 Committee of the Whole meeting. The district is ensuring openness, transparency, accessibility, and accountability at this meeting by the following means: that the meeting is live streamed, that a video of the meeting will be available on the district website for viewing on an on-demand basis, that the meeting is open to the public for electronic and participation via WebEx, and limited in-person attendance in council meetings to observe the council meeting. Could I have a motion to adopt that recommendation? Councillor French, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Herford. And all in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried. First up, we have a delegation from the Squamish Search and Rescue, Raz Peel, and President, and BJ Chute, Squamish Search and Rescue Manager from the Squamish Search and Rescue Society, giving us an update of their programs. And please take it away, gentlemen.
Hey guys, thanks for having us and appreciate the time. So I think just briefly introduce ourselves because I haven't met many of you guys before. So I'm Raz. I am currently our society's president. I'm here with BJ, who's our director of operations, who was our past president. So many of you guys would probably know BJ.
Right. Mayor Elliott, council, district staff, thank you for having us on for what really is our annual presentation, but it's an honor and a privilege to sit before you to share some of the work that our volunteers have been doing over the past year. And I think that we obviously would be very remiss if we didn't extend our heartfelt thanks towards the District of Squamish staff, as well as Mayor and Council, for your unfettered support last week. I think we saw an amazing community outpouring in which 800 of our community members came together and assist our SAR volunteers, and that was an extremely successful day with no small thanks to council and to the staff. We learned a lot of things. We learned a lot of lessons, but one of the things that we saw worked really well was just having such a strong relationship with our district, in particular the staff who were there assisting us with the registration, assisting in mustering all of those people to get 800 people registered in groups, briefed, and out the door in less than an hour and 15 minutes was quite the feat that would not have been possible without the strong support and the hard work that the district staff over there put forward. So at the risk of missing people, and every time we thank somebody, we do that. But I think, we have this opportunity to sit before you and just say thank you. Not only that day, but obviously throughout the year, we work quite closely with the emergency program with Megan and with Sean. Pete Tremblay, who actually we just had to hustle out of our SAR base because he's here working on our trucks for this presentation. Sean Sweeney, captain of the Squamish Fire Department, Neil, Nav, and Camilla are sort of our go-to, but we know that there's many people behind the scenes that work tirelessly to support SAR. So, thank you to that and to you as the leaders of our community for allowing that relationship to build and to grow even more strongly as we move forward. I'm sure that there's questions about this week's search, and maybe we can reserve that to the end here. We'll try and be quick with our presentation and allow most of the time for any sort of open dialogue or back and forth that you may have to us. So Raz has a bit of a spiel here.
Yeah, so I actually think many of the council, just given your involvement in our community, have a good grasp on what we do within search and rescue. But we thought we'd do a very quick elevator speech version of it, just for anyone else in attendance that may not know us as intimately as well. So we just really fast want to go through who, what, where, when, and then some of the challenges that we'd like for your help in resolving in the near future. So we can move on to the next slide there if we can. And so as far as things go, Squamish Search and Rescue is a non-profit society. We've been, there's a long history of being involved in Squamish, and BJ can correct me, but I think goes as far back as the 70s. So we're over 50 years of operation out of the region now, under Emergency Management BC's guidelines. All of us are volunteer members, and if we move to the next slide, we'll try advance through this pretty fast. So all of us are volunteer members. These are our current membership stats as we sit right now. So there's 41 active members, and active really just denotes these are members that respond in the field. So all of us, even the members in training, the support members and honorary members, are active members in the colloquial sense of the word. Everyone is still very, very involved in the society and the operations of the society. But there's 41 members whose sole mandate is to respond to searches and rescues as they arise. And then we also have 16 new members we brought on this year, 9 members that are in reserve that we call for technical expertise, and 14 support members that very much keep the society running and operate behind the scenes to make sure that we have the equipment, the training, the resources to function on an ongoing basis. We can just advance there.
And I think if we just kind of just keep advancing through the slides, we can cover these pretty quick. But mountain rescue covers basically all of the high alpine, the technical terrain in and around Squamish, which I'm sure we can appreciate there is many.
Next.
And our helicopter rescue is divided into 3 categories. All of our members who go in the field are trained in our helicopter rescue, as well as hover entry and exit, which is where a helicopter can't land, but we can crawl in and out of the machine. And then we have about 17 members that are qualified to hang underneath the helicopter or be lowered out from a winch system in the helicopter. And although this is obviously this is the picture that the media loves the most, this really is a small proportion of the calls that we do. There are technical issues. We work quite closely, and the last couple of years, even more closely with the Squamish Fire Department to bring our helicopter long line system in to assist Squamish Fire with some of the more technical and challenging remote areas that they respond to as well. So next slide should bring us to avalanche rescue, I think. We don't do a lot of avalanche rescue, but the important part about this is that the avalanche response team is the foundation for our winter response. So our members need a certain level of avalanche response training in order to access winter terrain. So even if we don't go to an active avalanche site, our members of the avalanche response team will still respond to, say, places like Elfin Lake or Red Heather Paul Ridge. Even though it's not an avalanche, it could just be a winter response anytime there's a significant amount of snow on the ground. And then we have our GSAR, which is our ground SAR, which is our baseline training for all of our members. We have, I think, 16 or so members that we're currently training. It's about a year-long program with Squamish SAR. They do some field exercises, as well as some classroom and online learning, as well as some self-paced learning to learn all of the basic search techniques, rescue techniques, policies, procedures. It's the foundation of what we build on. And I think the next one just covers some more ground SAR, just some pictures of our everyday searches. You probably see or hear me say quite often that the 3 things that we know for certain during a search or rescue operation, and it's going to become cold, it's going to become wet, and it's going to become dark. And you can see the picture on the left there of our members out in those elements there. So that's an important message for anybody watching, that those are the key environmental issues that we want people to learn and to combat the best that they can. We're also quite fortunate on our team, and I think our community, oh, sorry, I missed rope rescue. So rope rescue covers, any technical rope rescue. So again, we have the ability, because we train together and train to the same standards, that we can, what we call plug and play with the Squamish Fire Department. So we can assist them, and they can assist us with some of the technical rope rescue areas in which we have to lower somebody or raise somebody off of a cliffside or out of a canyon, so to speak. And on top of that, our next slide is our swift water rescue, and obviously swift water, any of the moving water. So one of the things I forgot in the introduction is that Squamish Search and Rescue, we're responsible for inland water, which includes lakes and rivers, whereas our local marine search and rescue group is responsible for anything in the ocean. So although we can respond together to, say, the Blind Channel, the marine search and rescue is not trained to the same standards for moving water as our team is. And then it brings us to a unique program within Squamish, although it's a provincial program led by the BC Search and Rescue Association, the Adventure Smart program. The two ladies you see there, Cheryl and Christine, head our prevention team here in Squamish, and they see every student at some point during their school life here. All of the students are provided with a prevention day, and that's in cooperation with the school district here, as well as multiple trailhead days where our members go out and set up a stationary station, say at the Chief or at Mirren or Garibaldi Park, and they talk to everybody that's going by to ensure that they're prepared for their day out in venturing. We don't have a matrix, we don't have a way to kind of gauge the effectiveness, but we know that prevention is really the only answer and the number one key in reducing search and rescue events, not just here in Squamish, but province-wide. And I'll let Raz talk to the next couple of slides if we can advance. There we go.
Awesome. So just as far as things go, BJ already alluded to this, but I think it's just worth having it front and center that the majority of the work that we do isn't actually captured by the media, and we don't really present it ourselves very often, so this is a unique chance for us to share that message. But most of the work that goes on within the search and rescue spectrum actually happens behind the scenes. So things like the gaming grant proposal and our advanced medical program, these are both programs that take up an immense amount of time from people in an administrative capacity that we support. We have our hoist program, as well as the MIT intake, so bringing on new members. We train all our new members ourselves in-house to our standards, and we operate at a standard for a fairly high level as a provincial search team. And it takes an immense amount of effort to do these things, and the small bit that's captured that we tend to see in the media, in the newspaper and similar, isn't demonstrated very effectively. So yeah, a huge thanks to me for all of our members for all the work that goes on behind the scenes, including the uniform committee, picking up a new water truck to better respond to the flat water and swift water rescues that happen in our region, as well as planning for the new compound, which we'll talk to briefly in a moment here. So we can just move on next, and we can just look at our task volume, and I'll let BJ speak to this on the operations side.
Sure. So as you can see on this slide, is basically a steady increase in calls, which is going to be no surprise to this group and potentially to people looking at. When I first joined the team in 2011, I think it was, we just broke 50 calls, and now we're looking at almost 3 times that volume. A couple of days ago marked our 135th call out for the year. And I'll just sort of skip over back and forth a couple of slides, but we operate in an area from Porto Cove to Daisy Lake and everywhere sort of east and west. So, Squamish SAR, although is one of the busiest teams in the province, if not the busiest team in the province, then we also have one of the largest areas and most technical areas. I think our team performs at least, if it's not entirely a true statement, more technical rescues than most teams in the province do. So we're quite fortunate to have the capacity, and we're quite fortunate to have the caliber of volunteers in which that we've managed to recruit over the past couple of decades here that came straight from the community of Squamish. Our members are volunteers. We're a 100% volunteer team. We operate, as you can imagine, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. And the way that we operate is under the 911 system. Although we are not dispatched by the 911 operators, the call needs to go to either the ambulance service or the RCMP, who request us because the either missing person, lost person, injured person is outside of their rescue capabilities or in a remote area that can't be accessed by BC Ambulance, for example, or the local RCMP detachment. So we work very closely with the 911 system. Is in there again is the Squamish Fire Department, but we are 100% volunteer. So our members are on call. We don't have a roster. Our members are on call for that time, and when a call comes into our organization, one of our SAR managers is tasked with gathering all of that information and paging out the appropriate team members to see if anyone is available to respond. And we have had a success rate this year of the last couple of years of 100%. There hasn't been a call in which we haven't been able to respond to, which is again, I think, a testament to the commitment and dedication of our members.
Yeah, so I think our members are putting in anywhere from 100 to 800 hours of volunteering a year, which is pretty impressive. But I would like to just move us forward. So if we can skip to the next slide, and we'll just briefly talk about funding there. So as far as how we operate, mostly we're a group that operates on donations, so in-kind contributions towards the compound. I know the district, and we're grateful for your contributions for the district, for helping maintain our vehicles and for the space that we currently have. But mostly and we can move on to the next slide as well, which still talks about funding. So some of it comes from the SLRD. A lot of it comes from, as far as operational goes, a lot of it comes from the province itself and through grants. And the gaming grant is a big is a big deal for us. It's quite onerous from an administrative perspective to apply for, but it has helped cover the cost of vehicles when we need to. For example, the water truck in the last year, we upgraded a number of different things there to better respond to swift water calls in the region that are increasing the last year. And if we just move forward one more slide there.
I think it's important to note that with our agreement with the district, even though we are purchasing the vehicles, the district is allowing us to purchase under your buying power. So we have an arrangement with your fleet operations to, we basically pick what the type of vehicle that we need. We work with Peter Tremblay and his team and to source that vehicle and bring it back to us. And that's really unique to Squamish and a benefit to our team that is just incredible.
Right. And frankly, we wouldn't have been able to purchase a water trailer in the last year to better respond to these swift water calls that are increasing without your help. So we're definitely grateful for it. I think we can just skip forward in funding here. The last point there is worth mentioning that our members donate meals and mileage is delivered to us on a provincial search perspective on a flat rate, and all that money is donated back to the team to help support operations. So we really, not only is it all volunteer, but we all contribute a number of hundreds of dollars a year as well. So I think we'll skip this one because we've talked briefly about the community benefits, and I do want to make sure we save some time for Q&A at the end there. As far as challenges go, I just want to briefly talk about these. The future of search and rescue in BC isn't really stable, and while as a team, as a really active team, we're constantly moving towards a stable model, and we're always projecting a year or two or even 5 years out. We're going to do whatever we can to make sure we're still able to meet the demand and the response and the capability that we have. But certainly one of the challenges we have is that we can't predict 2, 3, 4, 5 years ahead of time here, and it's pretty tough as a non-for-profit with a grant funding model. And that funding model is through BC SARA, and there's been some efforts to try and make it more stable, but we're certainly not there yet. In addition, the SLRD and the gaming grant are also not guaranteed, and we need to use them in a timely fashion, which makes things a little bit difficult if we progress it, as far as things like space, because we can't really save the money to put aside for existing space if we have, a certain amount of money in our bank account that disqualifies us from a number of these grants. And so what we really need from the district is a long-term commitment for accommodation. Our current agreement expires in 2023, and putting money aside for a building is certainly not cheap. And we anticipate that at the current rate, at least, we won't be able to apply for grants. We'll be not eligible to do so in the future unless something changes. So we would really like your help. And I know there's been talks already, and I'm just mostly I'm very grateful for the efforts that have been put in until now. I mostly just press this because there is a sense of urgency on our side. And we would, in the near future, I know we've been talking about this for over a year now, but we would love to have you over at our facility to do a tour and to show you guys what our needs are and how we're trying to meet them currently, and just see the space and the equipment that we have and we store. And I think it would be great to have you guys over here in the near future, post-pandemic. BJ, anything to add to challenges?
No, just
let's progress to the last slide here.
I think basically just in summary how we can continue to work together and moving not just our agenda, but I think the community's agenda to have a robust SAR team here that's well funded, that's well volunteered, that's well resourced, and I just wanted to again reiterate how grateful we are to have this relationship, not just in our day-to-day operations with the emergency management team or the district fire team, for example, but with mayor and council and the staff in general. We know that there's a lot of people working behind the scene, and I apologize those people that we didn't list off. There's just too many to sort of list down, and the number of tasks, whether it's day-to-day administrative tasks or having something printed or whatever the case may be, we know that the district is there for us when we need that. And I'm hoping we can continue to build on our service agreement over the past 5 years, and every year it gets better, and every year we see more support from the district and more support from the community. So again, thank you for that. And I think this would be a good time to sort of end the formalities, and we'd certainly love to entertain any and all questions or comments, concerns that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chute. Mr. Peel, over to council for questions and discussion. Council, any questions?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Just on the funding aspect, can you tell me how much the SLRD provides, and is that cash? And is that on an annual basis?
So we don't have a service agreement like we do with the district there, Councillor Race. We do have an ad hoc agreement that comes into place, and it's somewhere between $10,000 and $14,000 a year. And I think if you rewind the clock to our presentation last year, I believe it was Councillor Stoner who kind of drilled down into some of our funding last year and recognized that we were running a $14,000 deficit last year, and I think that's where the money came from. Mr. Rainbow was in attendance last year and left there and came back with that $14,000. So we do work with Sarah Morgan, who's the emergency manager for the SLRD, and continuing to work on a year-to-year basis to tighten that relationship in more of a formal manner, similar to what we do have with the District of Squamish. I might add though that it's a unique situation. Most SAR teams in the province don't have the same type of formal agreement that we do, and I think it's been a testament over the years of building our relationship together to bring this document to fruition, and I think more groups are looking towards their local governments for support the way that Squamish has stepped up to support our team.
And can you speak, are the other SAR groups, is there funding sources similar to yours? In other words, gaming grants and
they all are.
Local government,
I don't know them all intimately because there's 82 or 83 depending on the day groups in the province, and they all operate slightly differently. but every SAR team in the province is volunteer, and every SAR team operates on a charitable basis. It's just how they actually run their society or how they run their charities. But some are very good at finding grants, like North Shore Rescue, for example, is well funded through a series of grants and has a very similar relationship with its local governments, where some of the smaller teams just haven't had that opportunity or need to build that. They operate kind of on their own, and their fundraising activities are slightly different than ours.
And frankly, Councillor Asa, I think many of the teams have different funding needs as well. Like I think in Squamish, for this year and last year and possibly the year before, we've been the busiest team throughout the province, simply on the number of hours we've put in to search and rescue across the province. And I'd say our funding needs to meet that demand and that model are vastly different than some teams in the Okanagan that get 7 calls a year for searching.
And they also do more searching, less technical calls. So, I think Chief Stoner's probably on here would be able to attest to this, that rescue equipment has a certain lifespan, which is fairly short and is quite costly. And with Squamish having the technical rescue disciplines that we do, just because of the terrain, the mountains, the rivers, the waterways, the ice, the helicopter, the lack of access, that our funding is significantly more than some of the smaller teams as well.
And just the last aspect of this, do you get anything on a per call basis, like emergency programs? Do they get a task number and there's a funding from the province?
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. So if there's a flood or whatever it is where the province is going to step in, you have your emergency program manager, Megan, who applies for a task number. As a SAR manager, when we're notified of that call, I apply in the same manner for a task number, and it covers certain things. So helicopters, for example, we don't see a bill, we don't pay for that, it's paid by the province. And then any additional costs or gear that's broken or anything like that is covered by that task number on a reimbursement type way. There's a small amount of money that's allocated to the team. I think it's about $500 per call, and that we just sort of get as like a, I don't want to say gratuity from the province, but as part of that task number. And then the rest of it is mostly reimbursement at that point.
Yeah, and if I can maybe paint that even simpler, Councillor Rice, I think that one of the big issues that BJ alluded to there is that most of the rescue equipment costs obscene amounts of money. Like the equipment to dangle underneath the long line, were it to be damaged, the province would repair it. But buying it once every 5 years isn't covered by anything other than the grants right now.
So we purchase the equipment up front. So any of that equipment that is needed, we purchase that equipment up front, as well as gear for our employees, our uniforms, our jackets, our tents, our packs, our boat. All of that is purchased up front, and then we work on a reimbursement basis to try and collect that if it is damaged.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor French.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't realize that you had an honorary member in your ranks. I wonder, is it appropriate to identify that person and acknowledge their contribution?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So our honorary member is John Howe. He was one of our founding members and previous president, and so John is trying his best to retire from SAR, but he, like most of us, he's not very good at it, and we won't let him. So John is an honorary member of our team, and it's an honor to have worked under him and be mentored by John for a number of years, as well as continue to seek his advice. John currently sits on our BC Search and Rescue Provincial Board in a technical rescue capacity, advising on standards and best practices for technical mountain rescue.
Great. Definitely worth singling him out. I know he's had dedicated service for a long time. I also wanted to ask about the services agreement, and with that agreement expiring in just a few months, if it's not renewed at the end of the period, is there any level of panic about that, or are there provisions?
It's basically like most contract law. I think there's a clause in there that I can't remember verbatim, but that the service agreement carries on while we negotiate another agreement. So it's not like the district, and I don't think you have the intention of it, but would just turn off the agreement and walk away. The agreement stays put until we negotiate the one going forward.
And through the chair, I'll just add to that. We've actually agreed to extend the service agreement for 1 additional year, just while we're trying to address many of the challenges that have been brought up by the SAR delegation here today, in terms of assisting them to find future accommodation, future SAR base. We've been working on that for almost 2 years now, and it's been a slow process, as council can appreciate, I imagine, in terms of all of the stakeholders that are involved in that, and also all of the sub processes. But we are making good headway, and this additional year that we're adding on to the service agreement will buy us that extra time to have some firmer options and a much clearer path going forward next year.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks. And if I may, I think I misspoke, and hopefully Mr. Howe's not watching this, but although we have intentions of making John an honorary lifetime member, we haven't actually done that yet. The one on the books is Paul Kindry, so I apologize for that. So Paul Kindry, again, a number of years ago, was one of our founding members and is our existing member on paper as an honorary member. And many of you will know Mr. Kindry from his involvement in the community as well. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chute. Further questions, council? Mayor Elliott.
Thanks for joining us today. And thanks for your work for the search last week. And it was very humbling to see everyone who turned up last Friday. I thought you did a remarkable job corralling us all into groups and getting out and searching. It was amazing to see. And also, just how many SARS teams, that's my first question, how many SARS teams came from the lower mainland, if you know, to help us? I know our crew was led by Mission. And then my second question is, do other SARS teams own their buildings, lease their buildings, get free rent on their buildings? Do you have a sense of what we're looking for here?
Yeah. So first, thank you for your comments, Mayor Elliott, as well as it was a pleasure to see you out there and
for joining us,
assisting us. So thank you for joining us in that effort. And again, just having the support of Mayor and Council and the staff there is what made that day the success, in the sense that it was a successful 800 people out the door in just over an hour is. Like you said, it's pretty remarkable, and I think it speaks to the commitment of our community. The answer to your question is I believe that there were 6 other SAR teams involved in that operation. We had Pemberton, Whistler, Lions Bay, North Shore, Coquitlam, Surrey, and Mission. And those teams provided support throughout the entire search, so not just that day on Friday, but they had members there throughout the day. And finally, your last question, the short answer is yes and no. So some teams, such as Coquitlam, for example, they don't have a SAR base. They share a parking lot with the local fire department. Places like Mission have been successful in building a purpose-built SAR base. It really does depend on the size of the team, the need of that team, as well as mostly it comes down to the support of local government to assist in either finding some space as Squamish has for us, or providing space for purpose-built buildings and purpose-built SAR bases, such as North Shore Rescue has in the city of North Vancouver. So it's a bit of a kind of a smattering of different organizations having different priorities and different needs, as well as different levels of support financially and from their local governments.
And I'll go as far as suggesting that the teams that don't have a defined space normally have some kind of RV fifth wheel command infrastructure. So there is infrastructure in place even for the teams without defined buildings.
Councillor Pettigill.
Yes, firstly, thank you for everything that SAR does. My question, I think you sort of just answered it in a way, but I'm wondering, with your particular needs, are there any reasons why co-location might or might not be a problem? And I'm thinking more in terms of if the SLRD wanted some remote vehicles, remote offices in Squamish, or say we wanted a park satellite or something like that, is that the kind of thing that might be compatible, or you really need something more specific suited to you?
No, we'd be happy to cohabitate with anything. In an ideal world, it would be an agency such as Squamish Fire that we know we can share training rooms and boardrooms and those sorts of things. We have looked at, although again it's difficult because we are volunteers. All of us have careers, and we try and have personal lives as well. So we can sometimes only dedicate so much time, but we have worked with the SLRD in the past to try and identify land as well. We do have what we call a forward operating base located at the Squamish Elementary School. So we've partnered with the district as well as with industry to get some land there and have some equipment stored in that area. So anything and everything is on the table as to where it is that we can live. It just needs to be suitable and large enough, and have the space to house multiple vehicles, training facilities, that sort of thing.
Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. I'm curious about the educational aspect for the community to sort of attempt to reduce the amount of times that your services are needed, and how is that outreach done? Is that through community groups or targeted with the schools or
Sure.
or different sports organizations?
That's a great question. Thanks for asking that. The simple answer is that mostly the Squamish Search and Rescue Program specifically is an extension of a national program called Adventure, which is really targeted at children and youth groups. So that's kind of where our community efforts around prevention stem from. We go to, I think, every school in the last year or two or 7.
10.
We've been at every single school in Squamish with our messaging on how to stay safe, specifically targeted at children and youth groups. It's a bit harder. There are efforts across the province, and we do share in the task of creating messaging for adults in different, specifically sports categories and activities. So hikers, climbers, and we do partake in some of the messaging that goes out through the Squamish Access Society, for example, in providing a little bit of prevention messaging. But I have to be honest, those efforts are, I don't want to say few and far between, because we do actively participate, but it's a very different target demographic, and you have to reach these people in 7 or 8 or 20 different types of media. And we don't, frankly, do every single one of those types of media. It becomes quite onerous adding on to the things that we do.
The other part of it that we do is we do an analysis of our task both here in Squamish and provincially to try and drill down to the root cause. So why did 17 groups get lost in Murin Park this year? And so we have in my mind, they're a little bit arbitrary, but we have we talked about earlier the task reports that are sent into the province, and in there it lists both the primary cause and a secondary cause of that. And we try and drill down to, what is the root cause of these searches and these rescues, and is there some targeted media or targeting messaging that we should be sharing provincially around that? And so our provincial body, the BC Search and Rescue Association, who runs the Adventure Smart program, they are the ones that kind of come up with those messaging, and then they tailor that messaging in their presentations provincially, but we also use them here locally. Squamish is fairly unique in that we're super fortunate to have Cheryl and Christine in particular, who run our prevention program, and they're very passionate about that. And so most teams don't have that arm to their organization, where we're fortunate to have that. So it's relied upon the province to do that messaging for them.
And I will say, even the provincial efforts, so there is a video series planned for 2022 around staying safe in some of the busiest spots in the province, and the Squamish Chief Trail, for example, the Squamish First Peak Trail, has been identified as a hotspot for searches and rescues, as well as the Sea to Sky Gondola, and will be participating in putting that video series together, even though it's a provincially driven effort. The people on the ground will all be Squamish Search and Rescue members. So yeah, it's a twofold approach, but the provincial body definitely takes care of prevention, and we just extend it to the local resources in Squamish.
Thank you for that. The challenges of being the Lower Mainland and the provinces, and if not the world's playground, and doing that outreach to those before they come to be prepared is a challenge in many aspects of our community. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Councillor heard is that we rescue or search. I actually, there's only not very many people we search for, but we rescue about 20% of our call volume are people that we would consider local people here from Squamish and probably the Sea to Sky area. So,
yeah.
You know, we know that the majority of people are not from Squamish, and
Right.
and you know that we are a playground for the Lower Mainland, and we are a playground for basically the world on their journey through here.
And I think BJ is alluding to it, but maybe to make it more, succinct, is I'd say accidents happen to anybody, and it's the nature of accidents. And just with Squamish being one of the playgrounds on the West Coast, we just see an increased number of them. And a lot of the times they are just that, they are just accidents. And all the prevention in the world doesn't stop someone from falling.
I've been in emergency response in one way or the other for probably 30-ish, maybe 30 plus years. And one of the few things I know for certain is that if we put more people into an area, more accidents will happen. And we definitely see that. I think, you all know that our population easily doubles on the weekend, and certainly on the weekend summers. And often those people are stopping to recreate here in Squamish and the surrounding areas.
Great question.
Here, Elliot.
I wonder if Ms. Latimer can comment on when staff might be bringing forward some options for search and rescue locations to council.
Thank you, Mayor Elliott, and through the chair. I can't give you an exact date on that because there's a number of different options that depend on other circumstances. However, we are planning within the next year to bring some of those forward for discussion with council in camera.
And our team as well, that we understand that there are the challenges, and we know that the real estate people along with Megan are working diligently and hardly behind the scenes to try and help our team best they can. So we look forward to assisting that with further needs analysis, or again, we invite mayor and council and the senior staff here to, if you haven't been to our base, just reach out to Raz or myself. We'll happily arrange a tour and show you around. And sometimes it's easy to stand here and describe it, but once you see what's here and what's needed, I think it would be a worthwhile exercise. If for no other reason, then I think it's a long overdue for our members to meet with you, and so for you to meet with them and see who they are in the community and get to know them a little bit.
Councillor Race.
Thank you. And just building on the mayor's point, I'd be interested in staff bringing options and maybe a discussion around the structure of the relationship between the district and search and rescue. Clearly, in the time I've been on council, this has grown significantly over the last dozen years, and so I think it's maybe a time to re-examine that relationship and different options, and make some of their challenges a little bit more predictable to deal with. So I think we could maybe have that discussion as part of it as well. And I actually went on one of those tours last term. I think that was the last one, and it was really interesting. And so I would certainly commend it to my fellow councilors if you haven't done that, and I'd be happy to go again. But it's a great walkthrough, and it's quite interesting to see the equipment and some of the other things. So I'd be happy to take part in that with others. Thank you.
Love to have you guys.
For sure, and I think it's going to be said for some time still, but COVID certainly threw a wrench into those plans that we had. If I recall correctly, we did have some dates set up, but we're at a place now. I think we could do things you know, safely, particularly if there's one or two members that wanted to come at a time, or, you know, however we limit those numbers. We have a, you know, the ability to open up doors and wear masks and stuff like that. So we are back to training, and so, you know, we could put those dates out to the district, and you know, if you're available for a half hour one night to come and see one of the training nights, or, you know, just wanted to stop by for a coffee, or we'd have to bring coffee because we don't have anything here to make it with, but we'd gladly buy you one. So.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, and also Ms. Latimer, for your support. I'm sure that this council and future councils, we are going to continue to be interested to support you in funding advocacy at senior government level. It was the initiative of our colleague, Councillor Stoner, a year or two ago to bring a resolution to the UBCM, and we can continue to be in dialogue on that. It was nice to have you highlight the contributions of individual staff members of the district that you're working with, also of course the fire department. And it wasn't a complete list, as you also emphasized, and you talked about some synergies and piggybacking efforts that are offered on our part. For us, it's nice to hear this. This goes on behind the scenes, and this is nice to hear your report and testimonial. It's also nice to hear of your youth program, youth engagement program, and the scale of it and what you've achieved there. I'm sure that we're going to be interested to come and pay you a visit, and we thank you very much for your invitation. Thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you guys so much for having us. It's been a real privilege to speak to you all today.
Thank you, and we hope to chat soon.
Council, next item up on our agenda is the permissive tax exemptions presentation with Ms. Klassen, Manager of Financial Operations. I should make clear at the outset that as we have experienced in the past, we have a couple of council members potentially with conflict of interest on a couple of these cases that we'll be discussing. These do include myself, and I do understand Councillor Race as well. So I'd just like to spell that out at the outset. So we'll need to have to arrange our discussions, take that into account, and Mayor Elliott has volunteered to step in as needed. So we have then Ms. Klassen available. Very good. And please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair and Council. Just want to check to make sure you can see my presentation.
Not quite yet.
Oh. Let me. How about now?
Yeah, we're not in the full slide mode yet. We can see your presentation.
Okay.
There we go. All good to go.
Oh, okay. Thank you. The purpose of this report today is for staff to receive comments and direction from council on the draft bylaws prior to moving forward with advertising and bringing the PTE or permissive tax exemption bylaws to the regular council meeting on October 5th for the first 3 readings. As you mentioned earlier, there may be some conflict of interest with one applicant. I have moved that to the end of the presentation so we can administer the meeting accordingly.
Excuse me, Ms. Klassen. I'll just go to Councillor Race at this time, perhaps on this matter of the conflict.
Thank you. I was just going to advise staff and council, if you didn't know, my conflict is with the golf club issue because I'm a member of the Squash Club, which is part of the same tax-paying entity. So if I think staff alluded to, if we can confine our discussions on that to time when I'm out of the room and talk about everything else in the meantime. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Council and Ms. Klassen, my own conflict is with the same organization. I'm a member of the curling club, and decisions with respect to tax exemption for the golf club may impact fees for curling club members. So I will be excusing myself from that portion of the discussion. Council, any other cases of conflict of interest? It looks like it's just Mr. or Councilor Reese and myself, Ms. Klassen. So we could structure a presentation around that item.
Okay. Today we'll talk a little bit about guiding principles, evaluation, and our authority to grant a permissive tax exemption. We have 9 applicants to review. 2 are for 3 years permissive tax exemptions. 3 are for a 1-year permissive tax exemption. 2 for partial values of permissive tax exemptions, and then 1 which may not be eligible for permissive tax exemptions, and then we'll go through our next steps. The district tries to group similar applicants to the same cycle. So for the 1-year permissive tax exemption, we have 3 nonprofits that we are recommending for 1-year permissive tax exemption. A few of the guiding principles that I would like to remind council of is that the permissive tax exemption essentially lowers the assessment value of that property, therefore reduces all the taxes of that property. That would include like municipal taxes, school, hospital, and regional taxes, etc. The legislation prevents us from providing a partial year exemption. What this means is if land is sold during the year, or if there are changes in the activity of that piece of property, the permissive tax exemption remains for that property. If staff are aware of a change midterm, that the bylaw can be updated for the following year, but cannot change in that year. Today, we have 1 applicant where this could be the case for 2022. Section 25 of the community charter is a general rule whereby the council cannot provide assistance to business. Today, we have 1 applicant that leases property from a for-profit organization. BC Assessment will look through to the ownership of that property when determining the PTE benefit. Here are a few evaluating questions that council may ask themselves. Some of the ones that I would like to highlight are the services provided by the nonprofit, are they subsidized services? How wide in the community is the benefit? Is the benefit for a small group of our population, or does it reach and span a larger population? Is the service model available in the for-profit sector? Does the nonprofit organization compete with the for-profit organizations? Is there other funding available, like provincial funding? And will council be setting a precedent? What is the impact of to the district and to the community? Section 224 of the community charter provides council with the authority to grant a permissive tax exemption when the applicant meets the requirements of the PTE bylaws. Sorry, the PTE exemption is at the discretion of council. Land must be owned by a nonprofit organization. Land surrounding a statutory exempted property. So today we'll see in an applicant that is statutorily exempt. However, the land surrounding that exempt property, it usually includes landscaping or a parking lot. They need a permissive tax exemption. Permissive tax exemption should be no longer than 10 years. However, the district only has exemptions for about 5 years. And some of our applicants qualify for a partial permissive tax exemption. What this usually includes is if they had retail or commercial activity, that part would not be exempt. And we have 2 applicants in that category. Just moving on to the applicants over the next few slides. This is Nature Trust of BC. It's a nonprofit organization. It's a new applicant for the district of Squamish, and the estimated value is about $25,000. And what happened here is that previously the Nature Trust of BC land was incorrectly granted a statutory exemption. And BC Assessment had informed us of this correction and noted that if they did not apply or grant a PTE, this would become taxable. As you can see here, this piece of property is about 5.6 hectares, and it's adjacent to the Squamish Estuary Wildlife Management Area close to downtown Squamish. Staff is recommending a 3-year permissive tax exemption. Secondly, the Federation of Mountain Clubs of BC also applied for a permissive tax exemption. They purchased lands in the Smoke Bluffs area in 1987 to protect climbers' access to the Smoke Bluffs. There are several small properties that provide over 500 climbing routes, and it's a registered society. The total of the 3-year permissive tax exemptions, or the recommended 3-year exemptions, is $26,300. The next few slides are related to a 1-year permissive tax exemptions, nonprofits. And the reason that, excuse me, the Squamish Helping Hands is a municipal occupier of 2 properties that support community members who are homeless or at risk of homelessness through the provision of food, shelter, and community. The 2 properties that we are looking at is a safe consumption site and Under One Roof. Under One Roof is basically a supportive housing, is classed as supportive housing and is assessed at $2. However, there is a small portion that is Class 1 and is eligible for a permissive tax exemption. The second service organization that has applied for a permissive tax exemption is a Squamish Senior Citizens Home Society. This is an interesting applicant, and they have 2 properties, the yellow area as well as the blue area that you see in the map on the slide. In the yellow area, the older buildings have a permissive or statutory exemption, and the applicant is asking for a permissive tax exemption for the areas surrounding those buildings. The reason those are statutory is that the buildings were built between 1947 and 1974, and are buildings housing the elderly. So they are statutorily exempt and asking for permissive tax exemption. In the blue area, that used to be vacant land, but now it's a building. They are building called West Winds, and in West Winds is a 232 rental unit building for the seniors. Staff is recommending a 1-year PTE for this nonprofit in construction phase. This is consistent with the applications that we've had in the past while a nonprofit is building while the nonprofit is building rental units, for example, Centerpoint. So when West Winds is complete, the blue area, the former tenants in the properties will be sold into the yellow area, will be sold to a developer. So The residents will be moving into the new west winds and the yellow area will be sold. Since this will likely occur sometimes in 2022, the statutory exemption will remain for the entire year. Council may choose to not provide a permissive tax exemption to this area in yellow and refer the Squamish senior citizens to the Community Enhancement Grant Program for their portion of the taxes. The current permissive tax exemption estimate for this yellow area is $8,900. Sea to Sky Community Services is a nonprofit that offers programs ranging from early child development care and education to parenting and youth services, family support and preservation of housing, community living, counseling, and outreach and seniors program. Included in the bylaw, the draft bylaw that staff has provided, is the commercial spaces in the center point building that that are occupied for administration and programming space for the Sea to Sky Community Services. Also, in 2021, Sea to Sky Community Services have become a municipal occupier of 38648 Buckley Avenue, as they have entered into a lease agreement with the district. They are also in a construction phase of building rental units. Staff is recommending a 1-year PTE for this nonprofit in construction phase, which is consistent with other nonprofit applicants. The Sea to Sky Community Services has also applied for a PTE for their rental units. Staff continues to support the Affordable Housing Strategy Action Plan, the variety of ownership models, the vast range of affordable housing continuum, the diverse operational agreements, and the potential for significant financial impacts contribute to this complex issue. As discussed in the July 13th Community of the Whole meeting with Council, municipalities have a variety of approaches to nonprofit rentals. As an example, the RMOW provides a PTE during construction only. The City of Kelowna uses an RTE program, and the City of Burnaby does not provide a PTE for any living quarters. Until such time that the district has a clear policy, staff is not recommending a PTE for nonprofit held rentals. In summary, the total for these 1-year permissive tax exemption for nonprofit service organization is $136,910. The next 2 applicants are for partial portion of a PTE. The Sea to Sky Montessori Society is a municipal occupier operating 2 businesses out of the 42,000 Loggers Lane, a not-for-profit business, which is the society, and a for-profit business. The director of the society has estimated that 33% of the space that is used is for the society portion. The draft bylaw provided to council has been calculated accordingly. The Squamish Valley Golf Club.
At this point in this Klassen, we should probably have a discussion about the items that have already been reviewed by you in your presentation, and then we'll come
Yes.
back to the Squamish Valley Golf Club under Chair Mayor Elliott.
Thank you.
Should we at this time, or would you recommend we open up for comments and questions at this time then for the items that you presented, the cases that you presented?
Yes.
Very good then. So staff are looking for comments and direction on the recommendation they've given for the particular organizations that have been addressed: Federation of BC Mountain Clubs, Nature Trust of BC, Sea Sky Community Services, Montessori Society, Squamish Helping Hands, Senior Citizens Home Society, and Ms. Klassen, we haven't treated the Sikh Society in West Canada. Would you suggest we treat those at this time? Would you have some comments or observations to make on them before we start with our questions?
The Sikh Society?
Yes, perhaps I should have asked you earlier.
Yes, that they already have a permissive tax exemption.
And Quest University, did you want to offer any comments on them for council's orientation at this time?
Sure. So, Quest is a new applicant for 2022. In late 2020, the Quest property was sold to a for-profit organization. As a result, the university has lost its statutory exemption and is applying for a permissive tax exemption. BC Assessment interprets that the community charter that the benefit of the exemption is the property owner, and providing a PTE would benefit a for-profit organization and would not align with the section 25 of the charter. This staff has recommended not to provide a PTE for the Quest University.
Thank you. And as you've mentioned, the Squamish Sikh Society have been contacted to let them know they do not need to reapply as they have a valid PTE until 2025. So at this point, we'll open up to council questions or comments, direction staff is seeking on the organizations discussed. Mayor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering why Helping Hand is only receiving a 1-year PTE.
All those service organizations, all three of those service organizations, next year, all the other ones will be coming due as well. So I was thinking to put them into the same cycle, so we would reduce the amount of staff time administering every year. So they're in the same cycle as the other service organizations.
Okay, and then the staff report says to provide a PT for nonprofit rentals, to not provide it until the affordable housing team provides further policy recommendations. I'm just wondering when we think that is.
I think we need to I think we need to get on it very quickly. We need to find out, determine how the District of Squamish would like to address the affordable housing, and with all the affordable housing coming on stream in the next year, many of them, like the 232 units, are coming on stream. I believe Buckley Avenue is coming on stream. I think it's becoming more urgent that we determine where we want to move as a policy forward with our policy on affordable housing.
This seems to be a topic that we keep kicking down the road, and I wonder when these come back for readings, whether we can get some more clarity on the timing of that decision. Because I think it would not only help finance, help our nonprofit sector and council, because it just feels like a heavy weight that's hanging out there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor Race.
Thank you. With respect to the present seniors society lands that you had, I think it was in orange or yellow on the diagram. We had this situation, I think, happened also with the oceanfront years ago when it was sold mid-year, and the question was what tax becomes payable. And so at the present time, the footprint of the buildings, I take it, is exempted by legislation. and we give an exemption for the lands around it. But that exemption for the buildings, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, would cease when the residents moved into the new structure. Or would that continue for the balance of the year? Because that's not our permissive tax exemption, that's legislation. And so I'm wondering then if the second, let's assume, for example, it was June 30th, the transaction happened. First half of the year is the exemption. The second half of the year, is it just the land that would become taxable theoretically? Or would it be the land and the buildings that would be taxable? And is that the part that we would try to recover in some fashion from the new owner?
There's a few things of when I spoke with BC Assessment to get some clarity on the statutory exemption. And I use that exact, those exact dates. If the developer were to purchase that property on June 30th, the entire property would remain statutory exempt, or that the buildings and the footprint would remain statutorily exempt for the entire year until January. So for
the legislative part as well as our exemption.
if we provide them an exemption, it would stay exempt.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Pettingill.
Thank you. Am I correct in thinking that in terms of the Montessori, the not-for-profit provides a childcare service, whereas the for-profit is a school service?
That is correct.
Okay, and then the other piece, do we do any sort of verification or examination on how monies flow between the two organizations, or if it does, or how separate they are? And part of my question relates to the comment in terms of Riverstones and some of the other subsidized housing or more affordable housing. We didn't want to get too involved in that, in part because of all the different sort of organizations and parties involved. And so I'm just, I guess, trying to wrap my head around if we're applying things consistently and if we have a good understanding, or just looking to understand that whole sort of picture a bit better.
Yes. Through the chair, I did speak with the Montessori director as well as reviewed. They did not have financial statements because it's their first year of operations as a society. And I also spoke with their accountant. And that's when we determined that the location wasn't 100% used for the society, upon that the location was used for the school and the society, so for the for-profit organization.
Of that project, there seems to be a lot of if here. I'm just trying to narrow down to, do you have any info there?
So the estimated occupancy date, I think from the website, was in sometime in the Q1. However, if you spoke with them, it might be sometime in Q2.
And the occupancy of the first occupants would be of the new facility would come from the existing facility. Is that your understanding?
That's my understanding, is that the older facility, the occupants would be moving into the new facility. That's upon, that's from our interview with the ED, the executive director, as well as their financial statements provided us with the notes on what would happen with the older property.
Thank you. I can see the dilemma. Q3 or 4 would be much more convenient, wouldn't it? But for this discussion, but thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Councillor French.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to be clear about the Nature Trust property. I think there was about $24,000 of value. And I believe there is no loss, no gain in that situation. We have never collected any money off of that property and we'll just continue the status quo. Is that correct?
That's correct. It was statutorily exempt prior, so we never collected any money from that that nonprofit. However, with the correction of the ownership, I believe it would become taxable if they
Thanks,
did
Chair.
not get a permissive tax exemption.
Mayor Elliott.
I just want to clarify, in the report, it says that the Senior Citizens Home Society could apply to the Community Enhancement Grant Program, but we've turned that over to 2 organizations. So wouldn't it be better to refer them to Council Contingency or some other program?
We could do that if council so chooses. If council does not want to provide a permissive tax exemption, we could direct them to go to a granting program. That's the intent there, to cover their taxes for their portion of the year, if it was 50% or depending on when they get owner or when the place is sold.
We simply just don't have any more control over that. So we couldn't guarantee it
Yes.
because we don't do the granting anymore. So that's the risk the council would take,
Mm-hmm.
is that the community foundation, it's not really a priority in what we provided in their principles. So it would be a risk on both sides to go this route. That's my only concern.
Okay.
Councillor Herford.
Thank you. On the seniors building question, what would staff's take be on potentially providing a 50% exemption as a rough sort of solution that signifies that somewhere around 50% of the year there's going to be an ownership change? Is that effective, or does that complicate going between these 2 owners in the calendar year?
I think we could do that to provide a partial exemption similar to the Montessori's Sea to Sky Montessori Society, or yeah, I think we could do that. That would work.
There's no further questions, Council. I'll just offer my own summary comment. I'm prepared to accept all of the staff recommendations and just also make the observation that I really do appreciate the clarity of your, Ms. Klassen, the considerations for evaluation. I find it's very helpfully presented and clear, and it keeps you on your toes as to looking for example, setting precedents and this sort of thing. So at any rate, for the properties and organizations discussed, I'm prepared to support all the recommendations in the report. At this time, I'd like to suggest the meeting be turned over to Mayor Elliott as for the item that we have not discussed yet. Councillor Race and myself have declared a conflict. And Mayor Elliott, may I suggest that at your discretion, you may wish to call a recess in the meeting if you wish, following our addressing that. Councillor Race.
Just on the matter of process, are we voting separately, or do we want to vote on everything now and then leave that discussion and vote when we're over the room?
Excuse me, I wasn't clear that we were going to be returning to each item, as we will be coming back with another presentation. But if that is the case, then we will need to return again or address that now. Did you want to, Ms. Klassen, would you suggest that we treat each item one by one here for your purposes, for your clarity?
It would provide me with lots of clarity if we could address them one by one.
Very good. That's what we'll do then. And just returning to the list here. Excuse me, the Federation, I'm looking at Schedule A, 2022 permissive tax exemption applications. The item number 1, or did you, I see you've got a slide up here for the Montessori Society. Did you wish to treat that?
I can, if you like, I can go back to the first slides.
Okay, thank you.
Or just, yeah. So yeah, so that, yeah. So first for the Nature Trust of BC.
I would
Mayor
like to move that the permissive tax exemptions for the Nature's Trust of BC and the Mountain Clubs, Federation of Mountain Clubs, be brought forward for consideration at the regular meeting on October 5th.
That's seconded by Councillor French. Any opposed? Carried. Squamish Helping Hands. Do we have a recommendation from council? Mayor Elliott?
I'll move the 1-year PTE for Squamish Helping Hands and Sea to Sky Community Services.
Seconded by Councillor Herford. Any discussion? Any opposed? Carried. Squamish Senior Citizens Home Society. Councillor French.
I'll move the 1-year PTE for the Squamish Senior Citizens Home Society.
Seconder, Councillor Pettingill. Any discussion? Councillor Race.
Yeah, I actually like the idea of a 50% exemption, contemplating a transfer of title in or about the middle of the year, so that the developer becomes responsible for more or less half the year's taxes. And the society would get the benefit of an exemption for more or less half the year that it will own. And that may be a perfect number, but it sounds from the information we have, be a rough estimate of the shared responsibility in the coming year, as far as we can look into the future. So for that reason, and in contemplation of a motion for 50%, I will vote against this motion.
Councillor Herford, followed by Councillor Pettingill.
Thank you. I also feel that a 50% exemption is a more appropriate course of action, given the change of the change of title that we can see coming in roughly half the period of taxation. So I won't be supporting this motion.
Councillor Pettingill.
I wonder if I have an opportunity for a clarifying question to decide if I want to change my vote, if I missed the vote on that.
Why don't you put forward your clarifying question, Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, just my concern, the idea of the 50% could consider that. I'm unclear about the cash flow implications. Would that mean the society gets stuck with a $25,000 bill? Or would this be seen at the end when the developer is more likely to get the bill?
The developer will not be getting a bill. Well, it depends when the land title is transferred, right? I think it would all be adjusted at the end in a statement of adjustments when the sale occurs. However, it's not 25,000. The yellow area is $8,800 is a PTE, the estimated PTE of because it's only the surrounding lands. So it's the parking lots and the landscaping. It's not the buildings and the building, the footprint that it's on. The statutory will remain for the whole year, regardless of what council decides today.
Further comments? For myself, I will be voting against being in favor of the 50% exemption model for this organization. Just a second. So I'll call the question. Any opposed? Councillor Race, Councillor Herford, Councillor Pettingill, Mayor Elliott, Councillor Anderson opposed. So motion fails. Councillor Race.
I will move a 50% exemption for this property.
Seconded by Mayor Elliott. Discussion? Any opposed? Oh, Mayor Elliott, excuse me.
I think this is a good course of action, and if for some reason the Senior Citizens Home Society does end up with a bill, we can take care of it through some other means, including council contingency. So I think this is a fairest way to proceed, and we can still protect them in the event that the property doesn't change hands when we expect.
Councillor French.
Yeah, I also feel that this is a fair direction forward, so I'll be supporting the motion.
Then I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on then to the Squamish or Sea to Sky Montessori Society. Do we have a motion to a recommendation on this organization? Councillor Herford
Thank you. I'll move this.
moves the recommendation
Staff
of staff.
recommendation.
Seconder? Councillor French? Any discussion? Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, I am prepared to support this, given the amount and the importance of childcare right now. I do hope though, when staff brings back the analysis around not-for-profits and housing, that there can hopefully also be some around organizations that split between a profit and a non-profit. And I think there's lots of legitimate reasons why that might happen, but other ones where it seems to me to play sort of accounting games a little bit. And so I would like to understand if there's anything we can do and just have some assurance about going forward, how we're analyzing that sort of thing. So just a comment for the future, but I will support this.
Thank you. So staff will have noted that comment. Mayor Elliott?
Can I just ask a clarifying question through the staff?
Please.
We have other nonprofit schools that have applied in the past for PTs and they have not received them. What makes this one different?
What makes this one different is that the Sea to Sky Montessori Society leases is a municipal occupier of the district, which is exempt. It's not leasing land from a for-profit organization.
Thank you.
Then I'll call the question. Any opposed to the staff recommendation as per the motion? Seeing none, motion carried. Next item, please. That is.
We were going to talk about the Squamish Valley Golf and Country.
I see. We're there already. Thank you, Ms. Klassen. Then I'll turn the meeting over to Mayor Elliott, and staff can alert us, Councillor Race and myself, we're declaring conflict. Councillor Race?
Well, I was just going to declare the conflict for the reasons given. As a member of the Squash Club, I have an indirect financial interest in this issue.
Thank you, Councillor Race, and I'll be declaring a conflict as a member of the Curling Club, which has a direct financial tie to the fate of the golf club tax exemption status. So I'll be excusing myself. Over to Mayor Elliott.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Just give us a moment, Ms. Klassen, to clear the room. Is okay, you can proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. The Squamish Valley and Golf and Country Club is an annual permissive tax exemption. They have a 12-year lease agreement term starting from 2018 with the District of Squamish. This was established to ensure compliance with the Crown Grant land conditions with the district when the district purchased the land. As per the agreement, the property taxes will be based on a proportional of the assessment for the property that would result in taxes of approximately $45,000. Due to the nature of setting the assessment values and the permissive tax exemption, it needs to be estimated annually and a bylaw needs to be drafted annually. There is a partial PTE to consider retail and pub space in the buildings. that that is, do we want to talk about the Squamish Valley Golf and Country Club and now?
Yeah, so your recommendation is to grant the PTE,
Yes,
is that? And it's just
That's
the annual because of the calculation that needs to take place every year.
yeah, it needs to be calculated annually, and a new bylaw is drafted annually.
Any questions, council? Council Pettingill?
From what I recall from last year, our agreement, the lease agreement, we agreed to grant this PTE every year, if I'm correct. And so the reason, even though it's in the agreement, because there's that annual bylaw, that's why we have to discuss it every year, but we've already agreed to this when we signed that initial agreement. Is that correct?
That is correct. We have to calculate it every year and calculate the percentage so that the estimated annual property tax is about $45,000. And due to the changing in the assessment value, we need to provide a new bylaw every year.
Councilor Frick,
I'm prepared to move the staff recommendation.
is there a secondary? Seconded by Councilor French. Any further comments? I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we can bring in Councilor Anderson and Councilor Rick. Ms. Klassen, I think we covered everything, did we?
I think so. We covered the Quest University and we talked about the Squamish Sikh Society and just the next steps. So we will be bringing the bylaws to council on the 5th. We'll be advertising on the 7th. And to have final adoption on the 19th. The bylaws need to be provided to BC Assessment on the 31st. Our total permissive tax exemptions might change a little bit, but our total for this year is about $199,000.
Thank you, Mary Elliott.
Includes it, yes.
Councilor French?
So I'm a little bit confused because on the agenda, there is a staff recommendation in front of us. Those motions we just passed, does it cover what's on the agenda? Or do we need a separate motion that's this specific wording?
I'm not
Okay,
sure.
so staff
Thank
is
you.
advising we've broken them out, it's covered. Thank you.
Very good then. Does that, Ms. Klassen, did you have further remarks? Sorry, I'm just catching up here for your presentation. Or are we
No,
satisfied in the information exchange?
I'd like to thank council for all the direction that they provided me, and we'll provide them with bylaws for the October 5th presentation or October 5th report.
Thank you very much. Council, we'll take a short break. I suggest with 10 minutes, that'd be healthy. But let's come back at 2 to 3. Call the meeting back to order. Next up on our agenda is a presentation from Catherine Mulligan, Economic Development Officer, and Neil Plumb, Manager of Real Estate, on Squamish Adventure Center revitalization recommendations. Ms. Mulligan, will you be leading the presentation at this time?
Yes, I will, Chair.
Thank you
for this opportunity. So good afternoon, Chair and Council. I'm just going to share my screen. And can everybody see the screen clearly?
You're good to go, Ms. Mulligan.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So my name is Catherine Mulligan. I'm the Economic Development Officer for the district. And today I'm joined by Neil Plumb. He's the Manager of Real Estate, as well as members of the Squamish Adventure Center Task Force, including Tourism Squamish and the Chamber of Commerce, and Principal Project Consultant Nathaniel Nationales. So the purpose of today is to seek endorsement of the recommended Squamish Adventure Center revitalization option as presented. And as part of this presentation, we'll be reviewing our revised approach to the project, the proposed vision for the center, including layout and associated impacts, the proposed improvements to be made, which would be funded by the Tourism Dependent Communities Fund, including Class D cost estimates. We're also going to cover how we believe this revised proposal reflects the feedback Council made during the July 27th meeting and what the next steps would be should Council endorse this latest proposal. So on July 27th, the task force brought forward a recommended option for Council's consideration, which identified center improvements that could help meet the objective of revitalizing the center as a tourism asset, however, fell short of achieving cost neutrality or revenue positive operations. And based on Council's subsequent feedback and to meet the grant's project timeline requirements, that renovations commence by December of this year, the task force is returning with revised project approach to provide more time to complete the due diligence with respect to the financial sustainability of the center. As such, this presentation focuses on the proposed improvements to be funded by the grant, with subsequent phases of the project addressing future building tenancies and operations. So a little bit about the vision. So from its strategic location to its unique architectural design, the Squamish Adventure Center, or SAC for short, serves as a showcase facility for welcoming visitors, investors, and residents to Squamish. The SAC welcomes thousands of patrons each year and contributes to the local economy via its function as a visitor service center, a location for business meetings, training and events, and a meeting space for community building. The SAC Task Force has identified a refresh vision, one which brings together Squamish as a place through rich and interactive storytelling, its people through a special event space, and its business community, acting as the adventure base for visitors to the region. Enhancements of the interior hall adjacent to the theater will create the Squamish story, an interactive and immersive experience meant to inspire a new generation of travelers to explore Squamish. An addition of new open space in the former Tourism Squamish back of house are to house a Squamish pop-up shop to feature local businesses, including artisans incorporating Meet the Maker opportunities, and a new visitor service area adjacent to the Squamish story and pop-up shop are to provide a seamless inquiry experience. A refreshed event space incorporating flexible and interactive design, which can be used for a variety of purposes, for training to events to meetings and featuring food preparation areas, is meant to refresh our theater area as well as create flexibility. Reconfiguration of the tourism gift shop is meant to encourage better patron flow and create additional lease opportunities for the center. A new outdoor experience, enhancing the patio area, will incorporate accessibility to the grass area, as well as a future children's play center. While I don't have more images to share in this presentation or conceptual designs, I do have a proposed building layout. And the proposed renovations will also include new signage, which is proposed at the Loggers Lane entrance and to the south of the building, as well as newly branded window decals. The relocation of Tourism Squamish and the Squamish Chamber of Commerce offices to a reduced footprint to be located in the now existing staff and drivers lounges to accommodate for new tenancies via future lease opportunities. And a small meeting area is proposed where the existing stairs are to access the attic area. It's also proposed that the waterfall be decommissioned as part of this process to reduce ongoing associated maintenance and noise. In addition to prioritizing Council's endorsed principles related to cost neutrality of tourism, The detailed plans are to consider other principles, including the integration of accessibility features, the Squamish brand, Squamish Nation's participation in the Squamish story, energy efficiency, and adjacent public space, as well as the building's wood-first construction. So what you see here is a revised building layout. And you'll see denoted in color are in light blue, common area, and in shaded gray where the bathroom is. You'll see Tourism Squamish's gift shop in a different or newly revised footprint, which encourages flow through. You'll see where our existing food and beverage retail experiences and new extended opportunities for food and beverage or future retail, as well as movement of the Tourism Squamish and chamber offices to where the existing driver's lounge and staff lounge are located, and also new meeting facility area where the stairs is. Future retail is located along the northern lobe. Renovations proposed include the removal of partition walls and some of the counters. The areas in red are the contemplated area where these partition walls or cabinetry are to be removed. The task force has been working under the assumption that upgrades to the SAC would equal the funding provided through the Tourism Dependent Communities Fund, which totals $700,000. Initial Class D estimates have been developed for the project works described in this slide. And Class D estimates include all project soft costs as well as project contingency. However, are subject to change as progress is made in subsequent phases of the project. So I'm going to hand it over to Neil, who's now going to walk us through this proposed layout impact slide.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Council. Neil Plumb here, Manager of Real Estate. And yes, I just want to walk you through some highlights on the proposed layout. So one of the biggest challenges we've had with the facility historically on the financial side has been that there's been a low percentage of square footage of the building that's actually been rentable in the current scenario versus the high common areas in the building that haven't been generating rent. So you'll see in the slide there that we've been operating from about 2,700 square feet of rentable area and about 6,500 square feet of common area. And as mentioned earlier, this proposed layout will be explored through future negotiations with existing tenants and the advertising of an expression of interest that hopefully will identify new tenants. At this point, we're not entirely sure what the final square footages and rents will be. That'll be determined through those actions of the negotiations with tenants and the new tenants. But what we're showing here in the slide, there is the potential here for what might happen in the future. And what you're seeing here is effectively a flipping of the percentages roughly, so that instead of the majority of the facility being common area, we're looking at turning it into a space where the majority of the common area would be rented. And based on some preliminary analysis and projections that we've done, we believe if this realignment can be achieved, that's going to significantly improve the financial performance of the building, possibly getting a lot closer to break even, if not approaching a break even. So we're looking forward to exploring that a whole bunch more with council later this fall as we roll through the process. And with that, I'll turn it back to Kate. Thanks.
Thank you, Neil. So we just wanted to talk a little bit about how we feel this proposal addresses council's feedback that we received July 27th. So the goal of our proposal is to revitalize the SAC as a tourism center and in alignment with the spirit of the TDCF grant. And while this presentation has focused primarily on proposed building improvements, we really believe that these improvements also aim to move the operations of this building towards cost neutrality. And this really is by focusing public or non-market areas to the least rentable areas in the building, advancing relocation of the Tourism Squamish chamber offices and Tourism Squamish gift shop to create more rentable area, and not limiting opportunity to attract future tenancies through an EOI process. The proposal introduces consideration for other public uses, namely arts and increases the value of the center's common areas by introducing new programming, events, and meeting space. And this proposal does not preclude the district from focusing in on other areas of council's feedback, including the consideration of operating expenses, First Nations involvement, and the outdoor areas adjacent to the building. In terms of next steps, should council endorse this proposal, staff will work to create detailed construction plans and engage the appropriate vendors to prepare for renovations to commence by December. The district will also work with existing tenants to review lease agreements in accordance to proposed changes and issue an EOI to determine demand for newly created commercial space. Following these processes, the task force would engage in operational and business plan development. Finally, we have a recommendation to put forward to council, and the recommendation is that the District of Squamish endorse the Adventure Center revitalization approach as presented at the September 28th, 2021 Committee of the Whole meeting. So thank you, and we are prepared to take questions at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Mulligan. Mr. Plumb, council questions. Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. I appreciate the work done on this so far. I like this this layout. I am curious about the calculation of common spaces, as some access will be required through some of the leasable space to the other space, and I wonder sort of how that was, how staff feels that will be accomplished, and if that's already been incorporated into sort of through access has already been incorporated in the preliminary discussions with the Tourism Squamish gift shop, as that would have to have some effect on their design.
Through you, Chair. What you're seeing, admittedly, is an optimistic view of what we think can be achieved. We won't know for sure until we go through the expression of interest process and see who's coming in the door and maybe interested in locating there, what their configurations might be. Our hope is actually that we can actually rent those polygons out as, in theory, as standalone spaces, but actually not standalone in terms of the flow, but standalone in terms of the legal aspect of the lease, but actually still create some potential flow through those spaces, because it may benefit all of the operators to have that flow going through anyways, and help and all benefit their sales and such. So we're working right now from the premise that we're going to maximize those spaces and minimize the common areas through there, give them exclusive lease of those areas, but have a recognize in their lease that there could be, that the flow would continue through. And that's something we hope to achieve and explore more as we go forward.
Thank you.
Further questions, Councillor Frank.
Thanks, Chair. So overall, I support the revitalization plans for the Adventure Center. And the proposed changes will have a significant impact on the theater acoustics, and I'm a bit concerned about this. So the plan calls for roller doors or something similar to replace the 9 existing wall panels between wood columns. The composition of those roller doors will have an impact on the theater acoustics. So the solid roller door material will cause the sound to bounce when those are down, and make the room quite active for sound and potentially produce poor acoustics, while a soft material will absorb sound and create a better acoustical environment. So it would be a real shame if we got to the completion stage of this project and discovered that the acoustical performance of the theater space is only slightly better than the roundhouse building at the West Coast Railway Heritage Park. So my question to staff is, someone on the design team or someone that will be brought into the project experienced and knowledgeable in the realm of theater acoustics?
Through the chair, yes. And Cal is on the line, so maybe Cal could answer this question best.
Through the chair, in short, yes, Councillor French, we have a we've consulted with sound contractors and consultants on this one. We do have a couple of options here. Budget's the one that's pushing us, but you know, the short to this one is, if the sound's not working properly, we can actually run a curtain on the inside as well. But we've got consultants and subcontractors on this, and that very point has been brought up.
Fabulous, thank you.
Mayor Elliott.
Thanks, staff, for this and incorporating the discussion from last time. So looking at the dates for next steps, it talks about detailed drawings and construction planning in Q4, and the renovations certainly starting before the end of this year. But then the EOI process also starts at the end of the year. And I wonder if there's still flexibility on those offices for Tourism Squamish and the Chamber. So if someone says, I want to take that western, that newly created western portion retail space, but they don't like passing by the offices, they'd rather have an entrance right from the door. Can we speak to the size of that space rather than the location of the offices and give potential EOI proponents a chance to respond? Do they want the northern portion? Do they want to be in the south for the exposure on the windows but have a weird entrance? So can Tourism Squamish and the Chamber be flexible about whether their offices end up at the top or the bottom, or are we going to get too far down the road in drawings that it has to be cemented?
I'll take the first cut at this, and we'll see what the rest of the team has to say. Kate, do you mind putting the floor plan up on the screen real quick? I just want to make sure everyone understands what I believe Mayor Elliott's referring to. So if I understand you correct, Mayor Elliott, you're suggesting that rather than necessarily hardwiring in that area at the north in teal that says TS Chamber offices, right now, creating some flexibility that a retail tenant might come along and say they want to locate there, and then we can move the TSC Chamber offices down to the south end where there's offices along the windows there.
That's
what I'm gonna
almost,
propose- Sorry?
that's quite what I meant. So that space on the west there, that red space, the newly created space,
Right.
their entrance is weirdly through that gray area right now.
Correct.
But through the EOI, if we said to them, you can take X amount of square feet on this half and left enough square feet for the Tourism Squamish and Chamber offices and meeting room, can we leave the EOI flexible enough, or do we have to lock in that office space before the EOI goes out?
For you, I believe we have that flexibility, and it's something we can discuss with the tourism and the chamber groups. I think the only thing, the major expense that we're or the only expense we're really thinking of occurring on this whole west side of the building right now, or the major one, is just opening up that office area, taking the demising wall out, and sort of prepping it for future offices. That's something that, you know, we're not doing any other major alterations on that side of the building, other than creating down in the bottom corner there where number 2 is identified, some improvements there as well. So I think that's something that we can explore with them as we go forward. I think that, you know, I think that actually, you know, that might work. You know, they may be more interested in that as well, depending on how it plays out. I know that, you know, this process we went through, they were trying to show some creativity about what they believe was moving themselves into areas that they thought would be less rentable. So, but this is an interesting concept. So I think we can have that discussion with them. Okay, or Cal, if you want to add anything to that.
And then the waterfall is to be gone under this scenario for sort of maintenance and upkeep reasons, or space reasons, or both.
Go ahead, Cal. You can.
Through the chair, yeah, both reasons, Mayor Elliott.
Councillor Herbert.
Thank you. In one of the diagrams we just saw, it still highlights the pump room. So I'm wondering, as part of the decommissioning, is that pump room still necessary? Does that run other features on the exterior of the building? I think we're all just hunting for space here. I'd just like to understand how that bit plays in.
Through the chair, yes, the idea is to remove the mechanical items in the pump room to allocate for storage.
Further questions, Council? Councillor Pettingill. Oh, so, excuse me, Councillor Race, followed by Councillor Pettingill.
Thank you. Just with respect to that little pond there, if we take away the waterfall, is there still going to be water circulating through there? Is there an inflow and an outflow? Or are we
Through
filling
the
pond entirely?
Yeah, through the chair, we'll leave the pond. We need to dive in there and have a look at it a little bit further to see what the decommissioning involves. So it's still too early days to get into the detail of how we're going to do that. But at this stage, that we'll leave the pond will probably stay there.
Councillor, oh, you have a follow-up question? Councillor Hooper? Excuse me, Councillor Pettigo was next in line. There you go, Councillor Pettigo.
Thank you. Just clarifying, because one of the future phases is expressions of interest in the lease, but we do mention explicitly now, we turn them chamber and tourism Squamish offices. Is that just reflecting current expression of interest, but that will be finally decided on and considered with the expression of interest of leases in general, or is that a commitment we've already sort of made for those specific offices?
So we've had discussions with Tourism Squamish as members of the task force in bringing this forward, and this was a concept that was put forth through the group task force as an option to make that area on the west side rentable. The timing of all of it still, we have to sort that all out, but I think that the intention would be to make that move into that space once the improvements are done, but given the improvements aren't going to be completed immediately, I think there's a bit of wiggle room on time there.
Okay, so I guess I take that to mean we're still sort of keeping options open, and we'll consider it all with the when we get to the phase 2 expressions of interest of lease and so on, just depending how everyone's timing falls.
Yeah, and some of those, sorry through the chair, some of those details are things that we can sort out as we move forward with the project. And right today, what we're hoping to do is just get council to endorse this at a conceptual level so that Cal and his group can get ahead with the improvements that are required for the grant. And then we can come back to council at a later date and have separate discussions on the expression of interest and the lease negotiations or the tenant negotiations. We will come to council for sure as well before we actually advertise the EOI, and just give council a heads up on what that EOI is going to look like as well.
Okay, thank you. And just partly on Councillor French's comments about acoustic performance, and my own observation that seems to be quite expensive or can be, and looking at how construction costs have really jumped and so on. If we find that our Class D estimates are low and we can't afford to do everything on the list, because this is a grant, are we able to reduce scope if we need to? Or are we obligating ourselves as a district to make up the difference and complete all the items on the list?
Through the chair, we'll aim for reducing scope if we can, but this is a difficult question. We'll reduce it so much that we can't get the product that everyone wants here. So the first step will be to reduce scope, and then the next one will be to see where we're at from that. So we're going to leave our options open when we come to that stage. If we come to that stage, we hope we don't come to that stage.
Further questions, council? Mr. Plumb, Mr. Oates. But we'll go to Mayor Elliott.
I really like the idea of the pop-up store and having small and new vendors being able to access that space. I think that's really exciting, but who manages and who will decide on all that? I'm hoping it's not us.
Go through the chair. I'll attempt to answer this one. So one of the goals with actually locating Tourism Squamish and the chambers, or retaining Tourism Squamish and the chambers offices on site, is for administrative purposes, for programmatic purposes. And so that's one of the functions that the chamber has indicated interest in, as well as running events within the space, as well as Tourism Squamish's operations within the center. So the preceding operational and business planning phase will be where all of that gets fleshed out. But the goal would be that a third party would be operating the programmatic aspects of the building.
I have a few questions of my own for the Adventure Center Revitalization team. And please advise me if these are matters that are best addressed as details for later discussion, but I'll give them to you anyway. And I'm going to start out with vegetation management across the road. The document that we had, presentation we had back in July, contained a known weaknesses table. And one of the items highlighted there is, of course, building visibility, including from the highway. Now, I've been with that Adventure Center, used it for 16 years now, and I've seen the visibility from the highway intersection decrease every year with the growth of that unmanaged vegetation in Rose Park. This issue is also a road safety issue for people northbound coming around the bend and not being mindful of their speed and potential pedestrians. So I don't see under the heading new signage and brand activation a reference to that vegetation management. Do you have a suggestion as to some other envelope where that may be looked after? Have you given this any attention? Thank you.
So through the chair. So one of the considerations that the task force discussed was sightlines to the buildings. So that includes sightlines to signage. So that will be a consideration moving forward. We don't have a detailed cost estimate of what that would look like, or you know, a complete idea of what that entails. So that will be something that we'll explore along the way. I'm not sure, Cal, if you want to add anything to that, or Neil, but it is a consideration of the group as we proceed.
Thank you. I'll move on to then the exterior ramp leading down to Loggers Lane. One of our longtime advisors on accessibility issues, Ms. Sarah Tipler, who's been a member of the advisory design panel. I have interviewed her a couple of times on this issue over a couple of years, and that is the steepness of that ramp and the fact that there's a very short landing. Ms. Tipler has been very concerned about this, and if I'm not mistaken, has raised it with one of the previous councils as a safety issue. Has any attention, or has this come to your attention, the safety for wheelchair users of the existing exterior ramp, and if there's anything we may be able to do to mitigate risks in that ramp design currently?
Through the chair, no, but now that you have raised it, it's on my horizon, and we can look at. I mean, the BC Build Code has specific angles that we need to work to, and we can open this up to look at it. Now that we're in there and doing renovations, it's a good time to focus on these items.
Thank you, Mr. Bragg. Another couple of quick ones, if you like. There is a proposal to remove the kitchenette from the current driver's lounge. And I'm concerned about this because one of the known weaknesses that was raised earlier in our previous report in July was the lack of facilities for catering. And also in that same paragraph of known weaknesses, internet. And both of these things are related to the function of the facility for events and meeting space, mini conferences, that sort of thing. So in proposing to remove these kitchenettes, is there an impact on catering?
So we did, through the chair, we did discuss the kitchenette, and we have allocated space for a food prep area within the theater, exactly for the purposes of events. The request of removing the kitchenette within the driver's lounge, or sorry, the staff lounge, was at the request of the proposed tenants for that space, Tourism Squamish and the Chamber, so that they would be able to accommodate the number of staff that's required in those areas. And sorry, if you could repeat the second part, I believe you had a...
Ms. Mulligan, I did mention internet, and I assume with the theater redesign, there will be some attention to this, but maybe you might be able to speak to this briefly, because I know that it has been an issue for tenants, internet quality there.
I think Neil might be better to answer this question, if I could hand it over to him.
Yes, I know that IT has been working with Ms. Gill in the real estate department and in the building about upgrading the internet there. So hopefully there's some improvements coming on that front in the not too distant future.
Thank you. And I do have a couple more questions, but at this point, I'll just ask Council if there's any further questions at this time. Then I'll proceed with a couple more. Heating, ventilation, air conditioning is discussed in the report, but not in specifics. Is there, now this building has something like $45,000 a year over the years heating bill. Are there specific strategies that you are proposing at this time to address the heating system in particular?
Through the chair, we're limited on budget for the HVAC. Once we open the door for HVAC, the costs start to increase significantly from the mechanical side there. What we will be doing is keeping it in the existing zone so we can keep the costs down. I believe there's some upgrades coming to the building shortly, but this particular building, as with all our district facilities, is tuned over the next few years. So we'll be focusing on that from a sustainability side. And I think that's what outside the scope of work that we're looking at the moment.
Thank you. In the chart of the proposed improvements, and I'm sorry, I didn't put it on the screen to look at it in a larger scale, but just on the paper version, I couldn't see properly. Are you proposing a level floor or leveling of the floor for the theater? If you may be able to just explain that aspect of it a bit. Thank you.
Through the chair, at this point, we have decided that we would retain the existing floor, given the cost associated with leveling the floor and the value and the uniqueness that the theater space represents to users. The goal is to increase the usage of that space for meetings and events by making more flexible seating arrangements and modernizing the AV equipment.
Thank you. I'm relieved at that. I did note the notation, and so I see that it's part of your ongoing work, and I'm relieved to hear of your perspective at this time to retain the essential profile of it. I did have one last quick question, and that is regarding sponsorship. The discussion of sponsorship in the package that we've received in the past focuses on the building as a whole. But is there an opportunity to consider ongoing, perhaps maybe outside of this project, but certainly within the discussion of cost neutrality, if you like, of the building? There's all kinds of approaches to sponsorship and different formats and scales and opportunities within the building and so forth. Is it your intention to address more a broad variety of sponsorship opportunities in future?
Through the chair, the idea of sponsorship is still being considered amongst task force members. However, that would be explored at a later phase of the project when we start the operational and business plan portion of the project, as opposed to right now, where we are really just dealing with the physical changes to the building.
For you, Chair, if I just may add to that, I think that's also something that we would like to see where the EOI process takes us as well, to see how sponsorship might be able to bend in and support any potential users in the building as well.
Thank you. Council, any further questions or comments at this stage? I think I'd like to, I do have a couple of general comments myself, so perhaps I'll go to that in case other councillors might want to chime in. I'll start with then my own comments, and then we can come to the recommendation. Councillor Race. Councillor Race, I'll go to you first.
Well, I was just going to move the recommendation to put it on the floor.
A seconder, Councillor Herford. Discussion. Council comments. Then I'll lead off with a couple of my own. One of the guiding principles, number 7, and I'll quote it: consider connection to adjacent public spaces and infrastructure. And I probably, in hindsight, might have brought this up earlier in more, articulated it better, at least in our discussion last year, I guess it was. But we need to consider not only connections, but synergies with next door facilities and venues, and there are a few, and they're growing. The Forestry Center Society is proposing a building, a large one, right across the road, 4,000 square feet, maybe 5,000. The cafe, the theater, the washroom facilities of the Adventure Center are important for the whole precinct, I would suggest. And that includes Smokeless Park and potential canoe kayak launch that may occur in future in the Upper Vaughan Channel. And so my general comment is I'm nervous about the constraining of the some of the amenity spaces within the Adventure Center, including the cafe. We'll see what happens, but I think that these facilities that are or kind of public realm, if you like, within the facility are going to be growing in their importance as the traffic and facilities and venues nearby grow. And this includes trail enhancements from in different directions for members of the public. So that's the first comment, and leads me to the next one, which is with respect to Squamish Nation heritage, and there's several references to this in the report. Again, the Forestry Center Society has been there since 2007 in programming, and there are installations planned, both digital and physical. And two past directors of that society have been Squamish Nation councillors, John Joseph, Chief Dale Harry. And so that there's a good body of work done, and it is revisited every year in tours done with schools and visiting students from UBC concerning the Squamish Nation heritage of that area. So there's a good background of work already done, and I would just encourage that there's some synergies there to work with that group. Finally, I'm a nervous supporter of this recommendation. And that is, the reason for that is that I was not an enthusiastic supporter of the notion of cost neutrality last meeting in July 27th. And there is a note in our minutes that, to quote, comment regarding imbalance of district investment in tourism sector relative to other sectors within the local economy, and further discussion after that comment was on how we might be able to move towards more cost neutral operations. However, I think that there's other bigger picture things to consider, and I stated so at that time. Tourism is different, and our partners that we are dealing with are unique as partners. The Tourism Squamish, its role in our visitor management strategy, its role in this developing the Squamish story and revealing it, spreading it to the world, from the New York Times to who knows what and where. But those are unique contributions that are beyond the tourism industry. They're Squamish. They are ourselves expressing ourselves to the world, and that's a service that is unique as far as industry is serving an industry. We have beneficiaries of that Squamish story, from our real estate industry and on down the line. We all benefit from the work of Tourism Squamish. So I don't think its work is reflecting an industry in a narrow sense. This is an old story, and why we supported the chamber, or the district supported the chamber for decades doing the same function, is recognized to be important generally. Tourism is unique, and we have tourism operators offering services, for example, in regional transit. They're able to piggyback on the tourism business and offer us a regional transit service. That's just an example of the externalities, the benefits we have from this industry. The Adventure Center is a future hub for area nearby facilities, as I've already mentioned. But these are services that are above and beyond, and I think we need to recognize this. Event signage that is addressed in this package. Well, that event signage is for events that raise money from local nonprofit organizations. And so we can't I think in an overly narrow way about what the Tourism Squamish is expected to deliver from an industry in terms of cost neutrality. There are so many benefits from this sector, and we need to keep that broad picture in mind. I'll leave my comments to that and ask if there may be further comments from council. I see Councillor French.
Thanks, Chair. Speaking in favor of the recommendation, I promise to be brief. This revitalization plan is overdue. The Adventure Center was allowed to suck financial resources for far too long. And I believe that this plan is going to steer that structure closer to the original fiscal vision for the building. Thanks.
Further comments, Councillor Burford.
Thank you. I'm in support of this direction. I really appreciate the work done with the task force to get us not only here, but the first vision and the further refinement. I think this accomplishes a lot of a high percentage of the goals that we all aspired to originally, and I think this will breathe some new life into the building and further support our tourism sector. So I'm happy to support and thank you everyone for all the hard work and the visioning exercises involved in getting us to this point. I look forward to seeing the next steps move forward.
Further comments, Council? I'll call the question. The motion on the floor to adopt the staff recommendation. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much to our presenters. This will be an ongoing story. We'll all be watching closely and in a supportive way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and
Thank you
Council.
very much. Thank you.
Next item up, Council, is a presentation from Carrie Ng, our Technology Transformation Program Manager. Mr. Ng, are you available?
Hi, good morning. Yes. Can you hear me? Can you hear me all right?
Yes, you're just fine. Your presentation is well before us.
Okay, thank you. And it's actually good afternoon. My apologies, not good morning. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Again, my name is Carrie Ng. I'm the manager of the Technology Transformation Program. I'll be joined by Conrad Cordell. He's our director of IT as we're providing the TTP update to this committee of the whole. Go to the next slide. We're going to cover off from the agenda perspective is we will do a quick summary of the TTP's purpose, its reason for being, and then we're going to fast forward to today and talk about the accomplishments that has been achieved, not just by the TTP, but IT and technology driven initiatives. Capping off with what we recently deployed with the Enterprise Resource Planning Platform. And then we're going to talk about how the building blocks of this ERP is delivering on the goals identified within the digital strategy and the application technology roadmap. And these building blocks are the new financial system, the development management system, and soon to be launched recreation management system. Conrad will then take over and he will talk about the efforts that his team have done and continue to do to make sure these new services and systems are available. And then we'll wrap up the presentation talking about continual improvement for community benefit. Really talking about what's next, what's coming down the pipe for the remainder of this year and what's on tap for next year. If we can go to the next slide. The TTP purpose was to give the organization the tools, the digital tools to deliver outstanding service. As identified years ago, the existing software and software systems were antiquated and they were legacy. And these systems were truly restricting the ability for the organization to improve and expand its service offering. It enabled rather than discouraged primarily silos. It had limited to no online functionality, dependent upon low value, high risk manual processes, and very prone to human error. And it added another layer of risk in terms of cybersecurity as well as system availability. These systems needed to be changed, they need to be updated with modern software. So we fast forward to today, and the accomplishments achieved. Go to the next slide. Is significant. So we've done updates, we've done replacements to our key systems, and Conrad and his crew have made sure these systems are always available, made sure these systems are secure, regardless of where individuals are connecting from. As we know, in the last 18 months, we've been dispersed. People have been working from home. So Conrad and his crew made sure that there's accessibility, there's availability, and these are secure so that no matter where they are, people can connect. I'd say the biggest accomplishment to the program to date is the implementation of our ERP. It's a made in Squamish solution. It's comprised of two significant building blocks. Our finance system, which is a source of truth for all financial data, and the development management system, which is a system of record for land. So any activity on a parcel, business license, and building permit is available in the system. The ERP is allowing us, it's allowing the district just to get caught up on a backlog of requests. It's allowing us to keep pace with today's demand. It's allowing us or enabling us to scale to meet the changing expectations of a growing community. And what do I mean by that is these are assets. But unlike a physical asset, which is contained by or constrained by size and shape, is that the vendors that we have selected, they are continually updating the products that we have purchased. So there's always going to be new modules, new features, new functionality. So the systems that we put in place can grow to meet the ever-changing needs of this community. The ERP and the other activities are enabling us. We're now delivering on the goals identified within the digital strategy, the application technology roadmap, and other documents that have been presented to this council. So just a quick summary of the two documents. And there's a lot of overlap in terms of what we were trying to achieve in terms of modernizing the system. Ultimately, we're improving how residents and businesses are being served. The three areas of focus will be increasing customer service, increasing internal processes, increasing our transparency of information. All of these will result in higher levels of services. The next couple of slides, we will do a bit of a before and after. If we go to the next one. A bit of a now and then and now. Focusing on those areas, customer service, internal processes, talking about those three building blocks, so the finance system, development management, and recreation management, and really talking about how tasks, and these are just examples, how tasks were achieved and the work required to get something done, as opposed to those same tasks being done currently with these systems and the new systems. The finance system has been in place now for about 2 years, give or take, and the level of capability and confidence within the team has grown exponentially. We're increasing efficiencies through improved controls and access to financial data. But what's significant, if we take a look at the middle column, is how business was being done previously. We were paper-based, so we were dependent upon paper for purchase orders, we were dependent upon paper for timesheets. And getting reports, getting information to you, council, getting information to our auditors, and just getting information to budget managers such as Conrad and myself was dependent upon select individuals in finance, the go-tos, and the information took time to collate and validate and get in front of the recipient. It took hours, took days, took weeks. Well, we fast forward to today, and with the new system, well, we're not a paperless organization, not at all, but we're making a really big dent by replacing our paper purchase orders with electronic purchase orders. So all the information is now within our finance system. So in so doing, we're improving our controls and we're reducing the time to pay suppliers. By having staff enter the time directly in the finance system, we're estimating that the organization is saving about 2,000 hours each year, just on timesheet process alone. In 2020, the cost savings was $35,000 in terms of auditor fees as opposed to the year prior. And it's because the information was reliable and readily available to those within the finance team. Further, as we're getting increasingly capable with the system, we don't need to rely on external contractors as much, hence the reduction in overall cost. And then what took hours, days, weeks, if not longer, takes minutes. So Conrad and I, we have single double click, well, Jesus, I'm nerding out, but we have immediate access in terms of budget reports. So we know within, say, within a minute or two, if not a little longer, we know how we're doing in terms of budget. Are we on track? Are we going to be over and we'll be under? We know. Further, our good friend, Mr. Russell, he's able to produce council reports to all of you within hours versus taking days, if not weeks. Go to the next slide. The second component and a big building block for the ERP is development management system. Well, we're increasing efficiencies by streamlining all land management activities. Take a look in the column on the left. Those are the three areas of focus that I've mentioned before. Take a look at the column in the middle. This is how we were doing business before. So first and foremost, if you needed information about a parcel, if you needed information about the status of your business licenses, if you just needed information about land activities, you needed to call us or you needed to come on site. You needed to call us to come on site during our business hours. So not exactly very convenient. Further, it's a system of reference. It ran on Excel. It was reliant upon Word, it was reliant upon Exchange or email. And it would rely on go-to individuals within each of the departments, these subject matter experts. They were the go-tos. If they weren't around, then if they're on leave or if they're on vacation, what have you, or if there was staff turnover, these individuals were not around, there would be delays. And there was limited interdepartment collaboration, as there's a lot of handoffs in terms of building permits and business license between, say, engineering and public works and even Squamish Fire. And these handoffs were reliant upon phone calls and emails. So things unfortunately did get dropped today. So we have online services. We have an online dashboard, and I'll show a quick screen of that at the next slide. And it shows the information on a parcel, the information such as business license, boundary around it, and the development activities. This is all available through squamish.ca for staff and for public. And next year, we're bringing on online services for business license permits. And these online services will allow individuals to submit their application, make payments, check status. They can do business on their time versus needing to do business on our time. We have a system of record versus a system of reference. And what does that mean? Well, just like the finance system where all information on financial data is in one area, same thing. And this is a single repository. So all information in terms of land activity is within the single system. This is huge. This is significant because I was talking about before in terms of interdepartment collaboration. This forces it. And what I mean by that is that all information related to an active business license or permit is available for those individuals and those departments that need to be involved. So individuals in building, planning, engineering, operations, and finance all have one tool to go to. So information in terms of where a business license is, a permit application, and status, all available in a single tool, a couple of clicks, versus needing to chase that information down. Go to the next slide. So a screenshot of our online dashboard, and it's produced by our GIS team. So we have two of these. We have one for business license, we have for building permits. This is new, hot off the press, recent release. It's on squamish.ca and via our open data portal. So on the left-hand side, we have the total number of building permits and then the overall value, and then the pie chart that breaks it down. In the map is that as you hover over any of those dots and you click on those dots, you have all the information specific, not all the information, but you have the pertinent information about that permit. And on the business license dashboard, you have all that pertinent information in the business on the business license. This information is readily available on squamish.ca, and this information is updated in real time. So what I mean by that is whenever there's a new permit, whenever there's a new business license, goes into the development management system, it is uploaded and now available to view via squamish.ca on this website. So if you compare in terms of how we did business before this, people had to call, people had to visit Union Hall to get this information. Now it's readily available online, and more services are coming. You can go on the next slide. We're launching a new recreation management software system, and it's to be ready in November. It's a client-first solution for all rec services, and it is, I can say with confidence, it's long overdue as the existing system has been in place since about the 90s. So again, if we take a look at the areas of focus on the left-hand side, and we take a look at how business is currently being done and has been done for some time. So yes, we do have a bit of online capability in terms of registration and booking of swim lessons and programs. But the second that you need assistance, if you've lost your password, if you need to make a change to your account, you have to phone. We have to provide assistance for. Staff, when they're administering a wait list, and I can say with confidence that the recreation staff is absolutely phenomenal in terms of making things happen. However, in order to make sure that the first person in line has the next available slot, it is a multi-day, multi-step process. If that person's not around, then you need to find the next person. It's 100% manual. And then in terms of daily cash outs and making sure that recreation revenues are within the finance system, it's a manual process that's currently dependent upon paper and delivery of those reports to Meeting Hall. In November, once we launch the service, there's going to be an online self-serve portal. So customers, recreation customers, can create their accounts, can view the programs, can book the programs, can pay for their programs. From a waitlist perspective, so as I was telling how staff administers it currently, it's a multi-day, multi-step process. Is that one space is available, is that the first person in line gets sent an email. If after a period they don't confirm, if they say they can't make it, then the system emails the next person. So the amount of time saved just in this process alone is significant. Then all recreation financial transactions, no different than business license and building permits, is uploaded directly into our finance system, so readily available for view for decision-making by recreation leaders as well as senior management. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Conrad, who's going to talk about how these systems remain available and secure.
Thanks, Kerry. Some recent sobering stats. Security is no longer just an IT problem. It's a business enterprise risk. And, the message continues that we cannot get complacent. The number of major incidents are continuing to increase, and they're more sophisticated and targeted than ever. So really anyone can buy the tools now and services on the dark web to launch an attack. No organization is immune. Really, the goal for us is to be a tough target with multiple barriers so that attackers move on to a softer target. We also can't just rely on prevention. We also need to be able to detect and respond to attacks and to have the systems and processes in place to be able to recover from an attack. So to that end, we've continued in this year to shore up security for the district. We're making systems available and accessible securely, with the added challenge of secure access for workers from home, and also ensuring that productivity stays high, especially with people working from home. So we've continued to reduce our attack surface. What does that mean? Well, it's these aging systems where we've moved to modern new solutions. So that includes, as Kerry mentioned, the TTP projects where we've moved from our old finance Maze system to a combination of UBW and Tempest. We're moving to the new recreation system, but we're also starting to replace some of our aging internal systems, such as our SCADA system in Public Works, our document management system, SharePoint, where we're moving to modern new solutions that are inherently more stable and secure than aging systems. We're also continuing our move to a hybrid environment. So we have cloud servers, but we also have on-premise servers. This gives us a lot of flexibility and redundancy, and it's really helping us to ensure uptime of our systems. We're continuing to improve our network, implementing new equipment, upgrading equipment, which gives us better insight, better security. We've also increased network speeds, gone to gig fiber network connections at most sites, and gig internet at most sites as well. And this, again, helps to support the rollout of these new systems. Also continues to support work from home. People are able to access our systems at the same speed from home as they would be in the office in many cases. We've implemented a new intrusion detection system. This is very exciting for us IT folks. We now have an early warning system if there's anything unusual going on the network. It's monitoring our network 24/7. It alerts us, and it'll even stop certain activities. And so it's a 24/7 operation where it takes care of the network or anything unusual, even when there's no staff here. We've also completed an independent security assessment and done a network penetration test. This is going to be an annual exercise. Essentially, we've hired third-party hackers to try to break into our network. We received a detailed report. Overall, we got excellent grades. There were still some issues to work on, but the good news, and I don't want to brag, but the good news is that they were not able to hack our network from the outside. Does that mean we're 100% safe? No, but we're definitely on the right path. And then the most important piece, staff training. It's so critical. We can implement all kinds of security systems and processes. Without staff awareness, we will still fail. So new courses are going out monthly. We handpick them and make sure they're applicable to our environment, to our organization, make sure they're easily digestible. and do what we can to make sure people are taking the courses, learning about security. This is really a critical part of our program. So we're doing what we can to keep up with IT security and infrastructure needs. But back to TTP, we also need to keep our momentum. And on the system and application side, all of these solutions require regular maintenance and upgrades. We're doing a major upgrade of UBW this year already. We need to make sure we stay on that to mitigate the risk of costly outages. We also need to make sure we engage with our users. And so that's formally and informally. We want to make sure we're getting feedback. We want to make sure they get the functionality they need. So some of these systems were implemented very quickly. There's absolutely additional functionality and improvements that should be implemented. And we need to make sure we take the time to do that. The other piece is our data. There's so much more data being collected in these new systems. We need to manage, curate, and protect this resource, and also carve out the time to focus on data, be able to present it in meaningful ways, and continue with our open data projects. And return on investment will continue over time. So we have platforms that will grow with us for many years. We can add functionality that wasn't part of the original project. We're not stuck the way we were. An example is finance is now looking at implementing payment cards, which is essentially replacing a very inefficient paper process. And this is something we can do. We can add that onto our system, integrate it with our new system. We would not have been able to even look at this before. So this is what modern supported systems give you. The new functionality can be added when needed, as needed. And there's things that we'll be able to do that we haven't even contemplated yet, because we have modern platforms to build on. And with that, I'll give it back to Carrie.
Thank you, Conrad. So what's next? We're continually developing for community benefits. So what's coming down the pipe for 2021 and 2022? And it's online services. The ERP has enabled us. As Conrad said, the previous system, we were stuck. Now with the new systems, we can bring services online. We can bring services to a laptop, tablet, or a mobile phone near you. So by the end of next year, as we go forward, a person who loves the Squamish life cycle will be able to do this on their phone. They'll be able to access the recreation center bookings on their device. They can pay for a class on their device. A local business wanting to expand in Squamish, well, they'll be able to access and pay online their business license. They can take a look at their permit applications and see where they are in the status. And a homeowner needing information to their district fees. Well, these will be online too. They can look at their taxes, their utilities, and dog license. All of this is coming next year. All of it's enabled because the ERP is now in place. We're no longer stuck. Next slide. The roadmap for next year for the TTP in partnership with IT, as I just mentioned, we're bringing services online. And here are the modules that are coming. So business licenses are coming online, permits, taxes, utilities, dog licenses, tickets, complaints and service requests. We're going to be expanding on our ERP. We're implementing a planner module, so that will increase the efficiencies in terms of budget reporting. So we're good for Mr. Russell to be able to get you council reports, but sooner than he already does. We're also expanding in the HR or creating an HR information system to give HR the tools so that they really can support and develop the organization's greatest asset, the staff. So it'll improve recruitment, development, and retention efforts. We'll continue to assist department-led initiatives, including Squamish Fire, as they move towards and update the records management system, the council software and supporting legislative services. And as Conrad mentioned, P cards, as this is a finance initiative that we will help move forward next year. Partner with IT to continue to make systems secure and accessible, and establish a transition, as the TTP will be over at the end of next year. But it needs to continue on. The support and the maintenance and development of solutions will be inherited by IT. And we'll make sure that there's proper succession planning in place. And IT, along with department leaders, making sure that all the systems, these digital assets, this digital infrastructure is supported and maintained and improved. Because again, we're not stuck. These things, these systems, functionality can be added on to it. So in closing, if we go to the next slide, the key deployment implementation is the digital infrastructure. These are digital assets, starting with the ERP, and it is enabling the district to meet community expectation. We're catching up on backlog requests. We're keeping pace. And it has the ability to grow. These digital systems, they're organizational assets, they're powering service delivery. But like any asset left unattended, they will become antiquated and they'll constrict service levels. The accomplishment made by this team has been significant, and I think from where we were a couple years ago to now is commendable in a sense that just everyone has worked so hard, and now I think we're in a position to really expand the overall service offering via the ERP and bring services online. But the data in the system, these are unlike physical assets. These things can grow. They're not constrained by size or shape. These can grow. New features and functionalities can be added, but most importantly, we need to have a level of vigilance. As Conrad had mentioned, there's threats coming at us all the time. So the data and systems just require maintenance like any other asset, and ongoing development by skilled staff. And we certainly have that, and we have dedicated staff within this team, as exampled by the accomplishments not only in TTP but in IT over the last few years. So we appreciate everybody's time. Thank you so much. And on to the next slide, Conrad and I are here for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rainey, Mr. Cordell. Council, questions at this time? Merrily.
Is it going to be possible to have council agendas read to us like a podcast? And then I have a more serious question. That's okay. I think I know the answer.
Through the chair, I will ask Conrad to answer that.
Yes.
My more serious question is, there's this big millions of dollar investment upfront to get us caught up. But what does the future look like in terms of our investment in IT and these systems going forward? Like what is now, your last slide spoke to the maintenance. So we've done the big investment, but what does maintenance look like?
Through the chair, and I'll ask Conrad to assist on this answer as well, is the maintenance of the systems, I would suggest, would be twofold. There's vendor costs, which are an annual operating cost that ensures that the systems that we have purchased are maintained via the updates and upgrades that are available, and also having vendor support whenever there's a problem. And then ensuring that there's the proper skill set within IT, but also the skill set within the department who's running these systems to make sure that they're operating at an optimized level.
Yeah, to add to Carrie's answer, we don't want to be in a position again where we have to have another TTP because we let things get stale, like I said in the presentation. So having that ongoing maintenance is huge, and having the internal resources to have that ownership of the systems and take care of it is huge as well. We can't just rely on vendors and consultants.
Thank you. And then, as we start to move into sort of mobile access for citizens and more online services, are we keeping and collecting more personal data, and how does that impact our systems going forward?
Through the chair, through the chair, the answer is yes, we will be collecting more personal information as people will be signing up for accounts and services. The maintenance and management and administration of that would be a partnership between obviously the TTP, IT, legislative services, and records management. Ensuring that we have the proper protocols in place to protect the information, to ensure that we are following along the province, and I'm not sure if it's federal, but the province regulations in terms of what we can collect and how we store that, and most importantly, having the necessary rules and processes in place for the permanent destruction of that information after a particular period of time, and or the need to connect with those clients after, say, a period of 1 year, 2 year, depending on the requirement, for them to re-opt in. So with the assistance and partnership between those departments, securing the data and ensuring that we're following the protocols assigned or the legislation assigned by the province, we'll be making sure that how we treat data is within industry standard and best practice.
And to add to that, we are required to do a privacy impact assessment for any new system or service. And so we go through those steps every time to make sure the data is stored, in Canada and protected.
Thank you very much. I really appreciated this update and seeing where we're seeing the return on this big investment and how it's making staff lives easier, but also our data more transparent. So very much appreciative of the update. I still would like Barack Obama to read me my agenda one week, but maybe you can't make that possible. And I'm looking forward to council being engaged on their needs to see if we can improve the software that we're using to deliver agendas and that sort of thing. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Other questions, council? I do have one, gentleman. I'd like to touch on the theme of transparency of information for development project applicants, where there may be multiple departments involved. In fact, this is the scenario that you've illustrated with Ms. Green. Now, as councillors over the years, I have seen, and I'm sure my colleagues have a lot of people approaching us, or numerous people with needing orientation, wanting to help and understanding where they're at, needing to vent frustration, if you like. And my question is, we have this new tool, and I have seen with people who have come to vent frustration with me that they're not quite appreciating the opportunities that they may have to assess the status of their application. And in particular, I note where there are multiple departments involved and pretty complex. We have a community of development application clients and customers that are very experienced, but we also have some that are not. And I wonder, my question is, and it may be a question for the planning department or other divisions, but can we give some attention to orientation of our clients and customers as to how they can use these tools to better, more comfortably understand the status of their application, who we're waiting on, what information we're waiting on, and this sort of thing. Is there a piece of the picture that involves orientation of the end users, the inexperienced, if you like, or complicated development applicants, complicated project applicants? So is there an orientation piece that we could devote some attention to? Thank you.
Through the chair, and just clarification on the question, is this in relationship to online services or an orientation just in terms of the overall process that developers would go through from time of application to time of approval?
I think the gist of my question is, can we better orient our clients and customers as to how they can use these tools for online status updates. I have
Okay.
encountered people, for example, who come to me or other counselors venting their frustrations, don't know where things are at. Can we devote some attention or to or new kinds of orientation opportunities, orientation routines for applicants as to how they can address getting online information about the status of their application?
Through the chair, I could not agree more. As we're moving towards more online services, and in the online services, we, regardless if it's for building permits or license or development, recreation will now have a new online portal. And what we'll be doing with that, and I'm hoping that we can set the model, is creating videos, how-tos, so that you're not, or users or viewers are not just looking at the tool itself, but having the opportunity to see a quick 2-minute, 3-minute video, maybe even a one pager that says, that provides the step-by-step guidance in terms of helping them find the information that they need, helping them find the information in terms of the status of their application and or other information that's available online. So as we're new to this, and as we're rolling out the recreation management service, I think that's a model that we want to really investigate. Is we have this great service, but let's make sure that people have the opportunity, the quick opportunity to learn how to use it. So I'm fully supportive of that, and it's something that we're investigating for the launch of the recreation management service.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anger. Further questions, council? Well, gentlemen, as Mayor Elliott has already related, this is a much anticipated presentation, and you've covered a lot of ground very competently, and we look forward to the ongoing implementation and unfolding of these new tools and the work that you've done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council, at this time, I'm going to ask for a motion to close so that we can discuss items relating to some personnel or legal matters. And so if I could have a motion to close. Mayor Elliott, a seconder. Councillor Herford, any opposed? Carried. So we will recess and reopen in closed. Thank you.